The South African government has condemned the deadly shooting at Sydney's Bondi Beach, which claimed 12 lives, saying there is no justification for terrorist attacks. Australian police say 2 shooters opened fire during a public Hanukkah celebration. One of the shooters was killed in the incident and another has been arrested. Let's get some detail now on this and other matters to do with geopolitics. And we're joined tonight by the International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola. It's good to have you here, Minister.
Thank you very much, Colin, and to the viewers at home.
Indeed. Let's start with those tragic scenes overnight in Australia. There's been lots of conversations, and the framing around this is that a Jewish community was specifically targeted in Sydney. Talk to us about how you are assessing this as South Africa.
Yeah, we condemn any form of violence, particularly this terrorist attack, which, as you have said, appears to be motivated by religious beliefs or hatred to the Jewish community in that part of the of Australia. So we condemn it, and we have extended our sympathies and condolences to the government of Australia.
Yeah. Talking about Israel, because this is part and parcel of perhaps how the international community is framing this, that because of this tension that has been there as a result of the war in Gaza, Israel retaliating on the back of the October 7 killings of 2023. This is part of this bigger framing. But if we bring that conversation closer to home, we know where South Africa stands as far as Israel and its retaliation against Hamas, and in particular against the people of Gaza. But something of a different nature happened here recently. King Buelekai Dalindyebo of Abatembu went and visited Israel. Since then, there's been disquiet, particularly within the Abatembu royal house. What is DIRCO's position on King Buelekai's visit to Israel?
Yeah, firstly, is that there is nothing wrong with the king visiting anywhere in the world and their friends. But there is everything wrong when he purposed to represent the views of the South African government and the South African people through the flag and through the message that he has conveyed. So we are very clear that we distance ourselves from any views he expressed there on behalf of the South African people. And the fact some of the insults that you saw them are uncalled for and undiplomatic. But we are glad that within the Abatembu royal houses, there is concerted effort to call him to order, to convey the correct message of the Abatembu nation with regards to their standing in line with the UN Charter and international solidarity, which has always been the position of the South African government, but also historical with the ANC and the Mandela family.
Yeah. Talking about that visit, Israel's own framing of King Buelekai's visit to Israel was to make a direct connection between King Buelekai Dalindyebo and this country's first democratically elected president, Nelson Mandela. The two, it cannot be denied, they are cousins and they are tied to the same royal lineage of Abatembu. But with that said, what is your analysis of how Israel has tried to frame this visit?
Is to enter into our domestic politics. Former President Mandela has spoken for himself about the fact that the Palestinian people will not, South Africa will not be free up until the Palestinian people are free. You know, it's a well-known issue. He spoke for himself. And no one can reinvent Mandela's standing and views with regards to the Palestinian people. So the Israel authorities are entering the frame of our domestic affairs, and we at DERCO are attending to that through our diplomatic processes and through the Israel embassy in South Africa.
And we know that King Bieleka Dalindyebo has assembled a team, a delegation that is not only going to talk to your department, but the understanding is that he is going to visit King Misuzulu Kazoltini of the Zulu Nation. He's also going to visit former President Jacob Zuma. Are you aware of what those will be about if the framing is around this visit to Israel?
Yeah, I don't know, except what I have seen from what you have said as an outcome of the Israel embassy and from what he has said himself. But the South African government's position has been informed by a number of policy positions of the governing party, but of the government itself in terms of human rights. It's in the constitution. It's outlined there. It is a position that is well entrenched in the human rights culture of our country, but also through the UN Charter. So there is nothing that the South African government that has done which is outside the policy positions. The Genocide Convention, is domesticated in our parliament. There was huge public consultation. South Africans were involved when the Genocide Convention was domesticated. The second one, the Rome Statutes, it was also domesticated through our parliament. And you know, when treaties and laws are engaged in our parliament, there is a public consultation. So from our perspective, there has been enough public consultation, but we will continue to engage stakeholders to inform them of developments as they are now existing in the court. The response that we're waiting for from Israel, which is going to be taking place soon in Jan. But we continue to engage the public, inform the public on these issues, which is a responsibility we continue to discharge.
Very quickly on this topic, I want to move on. The leader of the EFF saying we are merely paying lip service as a country on this issue of Israel because Parliament took a resolution to shut down the Israeli embassy, but it still continues to exist. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, you can't say that when the South African public is already paying for the Israel, for taking the case to court. For the past 30 years, we have been engaged on this matter. The South African government took a very difficult and consequential decision to go to the ICC, to go to the ICJ, and you know we are already suffering from that. But we stand for that because we believe it's a principle that we have to continue to protect and to defend. We have convinced many countries across the globe who have now joined us in court. Others could not join us in court, but they have said we recognize the state of Palestine through the Hague Group and through the UN platforms that we participate in. So that is a huge work of persuasion. So it can't be lip service. There is tangible outcomes which you can see yourself. The issue of closing of the embassy is still a matter under process. But on the bigger scheme of things, we have discharged our obligations in terms of the UN Charter by ensuring that we hold the state of Israel accountable. And that is the biggest sacrificial payment you can make to humanity.
I'd like to move on to Russia's war on Ukraine. Recently, in fact, it was on the 3rd of December that South Africa voted at the United Nations General Assembly on a resolution, and that resolution was titled Return of Ukrainian Children. South Africa voted in favor of this resolution. And the reason why it perhaps is being written about is because on previous occasions, South Africa has almost always, and I'm being careful here, almost always chosen to abstain from voting on resolutions that may be seen as criticizing Russia. And so my question to you is, what is the significance of this change in stance?
Yeah, if you remember, Xoli, South Africa has always said the matter of Russia and Ukraine must be engaged on the table. There must be a dialogue that is open from all parties. There must be an engagement with Russia and engagement with Ukraine. And at the time, there was reluctance to engage Russia by all the parties. We were the only country who could engage Russia, President Putin and President Zelensky, but we were the only one who could engage President Putin until President Trump was elected. So this resolution, as you say, yes, it has always been there, but it did not have the framing that deals with the issue of all parties that are affected by the war must be engaged, must be involved. And we felt that all those resolutions were too much into not going into the crux of the matter, but more political alignment.
Yeah.
And we are non-aligned. So we abstained, and we abstained with an explanation, even on all those resolutions. While we abstained, we explained that we support the return of the children. Even on all those resolutions, when you check, you will see we abstained with that explanation. We have always supported that. But we did not only end there. In all these initiatives and the engagement the President has had, including our participation in the various peace initiatives, we have participated, including to facilitate the return of some of the children from Russia to Ukraine. So the current resolution, which now came last week, only came with the aspect now dealing with only this aspect of the return of the children. So we felt that it is the right time to support it, but also because the negotiations are also now open, where Russia is now on the table, on the discussion, as you are aware, with the 24 peace plan.
Does that change South Africa's relationship with Russia, you think?
No, it does. It doesn't, because it speaks to the changing conditions, which we have always said we want those conditions to come, which are that the parties must allow Russia to come to the table of negotiations for peace. And now parties, all of them agree, including in Europe, they now agree that Russia must be on the table for these negotiations. The issue is the content of the agreement, which is now a subject of negotiations and disagreements. But that condition has now changed.
Again, still on Russia, but I'd like to move closer to home. Has DIRCO had any conversations with Russia's ambassador to South Africa on what appears to be a well-coordinated campaign to recruit South Africans to go and fight in Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Yes, we have heard, and we have raised the issue that this is against the Mercenaries Act. It's illegal in South Africa, and that those young South Africans who are fighting in the front lines of the war must be returned back home. Not only with the ambassador, I also had a telephone conversation with my counterpart, Mr. Lavrov, on the same issue. And
what is the government of Russia's stance here? Do they support this? Because this appears to be the work of some groups who are working with mercenaries. These people that are being taken to Russia are seen as mercenaries. But is the Russian government, the Russian Federation, aware that people are being recruited to go and fight on their behalf?
Yeah, their position is that they are not aware. It's some private entities that are doing this, but they will support any work to bring them home, to support what we are trying to work on. And it does look like there has been some deals, very strange ones, that have been entered with certain individuals here in South Africa. Obviously, I can't disclose because those are subject of investigation. But there is some deals that have been entered, which then impacts the issue of their return. And we are organizing. Hopefully, we will have a chance before we go to the close of the festive season to engage with the families to give them the feedback with regards to the engagements that we've had with our Russian counterparts, which we are now ready because we have had lots of engagements. So we are looking forward to give them the feedback, including these mechanizations that I'm referring to of intermediaries that are involved in this space that is further complicating and compromising the return of their kids.
Well, talking about the people that are stuck there, and it's quite clear which case you are talking about. It is that involving the daughter of former President Jacob Zuma, Ms. Duduzile Zuma Sambutla. Has there been a conversation between DERCO, the office, and the family, or are you leaving this to law enforcement?
Yeah, we're leaving the part of investigations to law enforcement, but there is some intermittent communication between DERCO and some of the reps of the affected families. Not enough, but there has been some communication. And I have also received a letter from the daughter of the former president, the one who opened the case. She wrote me a letter. She wrote the president a letter that we need to act on this, and we responded to the letter that indeed we are attending to the matter. At the time, we were still in some engagements or consultation with our Russian counterparts, but we are going to look into engaging maybe one or two reps of the family to give them the feedback of what we have received.
Finally, I'd like to enter into the South Africa-US relations. It does appear that you are officially sidelined as a country from attending the next G20 summit, which will be in Miami. I wanted to ask you a series of questions, but because of time, I'm confined to this one, because it does appear that in South Africa's place, you're going to have Poland that is invited into the table or onto the table. And I'd like for you to tell us your analysis of this situation, because Poland, recently, the one person that we remember as a country who's of Polish nationalism is Janusz Walusz. He was recently returned home, and here is his country being invited to the G20 table. You recently said that President Trump is pursuing what you view as a white supremacist policy. Do you believe that there is a connection here of South Africa being sidelined and in its place Poland, or am I making a mountain out of a molehill?
Yeah, firstly, with regards to our sidelining, we have sent a communique to all the G20 members, including the US, that we remain ready. We are members of the G20. We are ready to participate. And that the G20 members must discuss this issue. And it will be discussed tomorrow in the Shepherds meeting, because we are we are not just a G20 member, a founding member. We are part of the troika of the G20. So it will definitely be discussed. I also had an opportunity to engage with some of my counterparts who are G20 members. So the issue will be discussed, will be put on the table. Our exclusion. The case of Poland is different. As a chair or the president of the G20 for that year, you have got the right to invite what is called guest countries. So it's not clear also from Mr. Rubio's letter whether Poland is invited now as a member or as a guest country. So it's not very clear. But that will be discussed also by the Shepherds, because for you to be joined as a member, all the other members, it's a consensual organization, although it works with norms.
Yeah.
They must accept that now they are adding a member. So Poland is not yet a member until all the countries of the G20 have now agreed that they are adding another member. But the US, as the president or as the chair of the G, has a right to invite any guest country, including Poland. And so it's their right. And you will have seen also from Poland's ambassador statements here in South Africa. He said that while they've got aspirations to be members of the G20, they don't want to do it at the expense of South Africa. So I think that responds to your question, whether it's part of pursuing that agenda. So because of that, we do not think it's part of that agenda. It's the US having decided that they don't want South Africa on that basis of their ideological stance against us. So Poland has said it themselves. They don't want it to be done at our expense.
Minister, thank you very much for affording us your time. I would have wanted to ask you about South Africa and what appears to have been a good year, at least on the global stage, and wanting to reference in particular the jersey you're wearing, but time is against us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also wish Bafana all the best. I believe they can win it.
Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
And we're going to be holding thumbs for them.
Thank
Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, thank you indeed.